Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. I am very happy to be proved wrong once again. I always maintain that when you have a meeting which is available virtually, nobody will show up. And I'm happy to be wrong. Tonight, we are giving everyone an opportunity to give us their thoughts and ideas about what we should be doing for the 250th anniversary of the battle at the Old North Bridge, which we will be celebrating not just on April 19th of 2025, but for the year before and the year after, because 1776 was an important date as well. It's been my privilege to be designated by the Select Board to organize and to direct, or at least to guide, the executive committee that has been working on this for the last 6 months. We've had weekly meetings, and we have a very distinguished and very capable group of people who are on that executive committee, some of whom you will hear from tonight. But our object tonight is not to give you a lecture about what we're doing. It is to hear from you and for the people who are on the other end of the computer to tell us what their thoughts are and what they would like us to do, because this is a community adventure which goes to the heart of who we are and what we are doing. This town is a place which is important in the world because of what happened here over 200 years ago. And it is our responsibility to make sure that the world knows about what happened here and why this town is important to the rest of the world. We have two members of our executive committee who will be giving introductions and setting up the means for you to respond to what is happening. The first one is David Wood, who is the chair of our History and Education Subcommittee. He is the curator of the Concord Museum and a distinguished historian, and he will be talking to you about what has happened in Concord on the anniversaries of April 19th over the years, to give you some perspective on how extraordinary these events have been. The events that have taken place, the people who have come here and attended these events, and the enormous extent of the activity that has traditionally been associated with this event. Very few of you here remember what happened here 50 years ago. Yes, but most of you were, you may have seen it and remembered it, but you were not old enough to organize and direct it. And so we appreciate the nostalgia you have about it, as I do. But, you know, there were very few people left around who actually participated in organizing it, which is why we've had to make it up as we've gone along. And I hope we have learned something from it and will continue to learn. But anyway, let me introduce first David Wood, who will give us some background on the events of April 19th and the important anniversaries.
Good. Well, thank you. I won't narrate the events of the 19th. I assume you have all committed them to memory long, long ago. But what I want to do is just by way of inspiration, I think, look at some of the commemorations of April 19th. And for this first of these public forums, this is the first, by no means the last, I'll just cover the period from 1825 to 1925. And I will say that let me preface this by saying that much of what I'm talking about, especially for 1825 to 50, can be found in Bob Gross's excellent Transcendentalists in Their World, in case you want to, because I won't be using footnotes tonight, but I thought I would get that in. But I'll start by saying that the event, except for the year after April 19th, it had not been commemorated until the Jubilee, until just before the Jubilee. So between 1776 and 1824, there really were no organized written recognitions of the events of April 19th. Could I have the next slide, please? I'm told this is a Zoom delay. There we go. The Jubilee year was really crowned by the invitation of President Monroe to the Marquis de Lafayette, General Lafayette, to come to America, tour America, at which Lafayette did, landed at Castle Garden in New York in August of 1824, and then came up to New England and came to Concord on September 2nd, 1824. Could I have the next slide, please? There was an event for Lafayette. Now, this is not on April 19th. I would say that some of these early commemorations didn't fall on April 19th, and this is one of them. But September 2nd, 1824, Lafayette's in town. It was a big deal. Lafayette was a world figure. And it made for some contention in Concord, in that there was a velvet rope, and you either get behind the velvet rope or you don't. So there, it became quite an issue. There was a formal dinner. Many people not allowed at the dinner. There was difficulty. And in fact, the bill for the dinner, the town at town meeting decided not to pay it. So others had to pick that up. So.
I wish you wouldn't mention that.
Okay, well, it gets worse. That dinner, there was a speech at that dinner by Samuel Hoare where he told Lafayette that he was at the place where the first forcible resistance to the British took place. Well, these turned out to be fighting words for Lexington. Lafayette also went to Lexington. Lexington put up a banner which still survives that says, "Welcome, friend of liberty, to the birthplace of American liberty." So there it is, the line in the sand. So that's in 1824. And the town celebrated in 1820, celebrated April 19th, had celebrated April 19th that year, probably in anticipation of Lafayette coming to America. They geared back up for it. And then in April 19th, 1825 was solemnized by the laying of the cornerstone for a monument in the center of town. This was a matter of contention as well, worked out in town meetings. Should it be in the center of town or should it be out out at the North Bridge. There was a difficulty in putting it at the North Bridge because the North Bridge wasn't there. It had been removed by town committee in 1793. We'll see in a moment what that led to. But it was a real contention. That winter in 1825, there was a mock monument, I guess that's a monument, set up over the cornerstone, made of tar barrels and boards, with the inscription, "This monument is erected here to commemorate the battle which took place at the North Bridge." That being the bone of contention. Why put a monument in the center of town when the battle was somewhere else? A few days later, a few nights later, someone set that monument on fire. And the fire damaged the cornerstone irreparably, so the monument was not erected in the center of town. Could I have the next slide, please? So the other thing that's going on along with that interesting chain of events was that Samuel Hoare's speech touched off a pamphlet war between Concord and Lexington, Amos Finney on the Lexington side and Ezra Ripley, the minister at First Parish, on the Concord side. This is Ripley's fight at Concord, where he says he couldn't imagine that anyone would ever think that the battle began anywhere else but Northbridge. So this went on and on. And we'll see that in a moment as well. Could I have the next slide, please? The monument was erected at the former site of the North Bridge, but on the east side because there was no bridge. You couldn't get to the west side. And that was a bone of contention as well, which will recur. We'll hear that in just a second, that it's on the wrong side. That's the side where the British regulars were. The monument should be on the side where the provincials were, obviously, but that's not what happened. So there's the monument that was dedicated in 1837. Could I have the next slide, please? And at that event, the participants sang Emerson's original hymn, that's now called the Concord hymn. They had this little broadside. This was distributed to the crowd, and they sang this to the tune of the doxology. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled. Here once the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard around the world. Excellent. Good for you. Could I have the next slide, please? Lexington and Concord did not celebrate together in 1837 or any other year until 1850, when there was a Union celebration, including several towns, Bedford, Lincoln, Acton, Carlisle, and Lexington, and it's proudly called the Union celebration, and that may have been the last time. Could I have the next slide, please? But the big one is the centennial. In 1875, President Grant came to Concord and to Lexington, but he had to come to both towns because Concord and Lexington decided that they were not going to celebrate the centennial together. But Grant was a good sport. It was a very cold day. It was kind of rough. But here is President Grant in front of Ebenezer Rockwood's Hoare. This is now part of Ebenezer Rockwood Hoare's house. This is now part of Concord Academy. Could I have the next slide, please? And E.R. Hoare commissioned a set of china from the Royal Worcester Company for this dinner for the president, which they had sometime after 9 o'clock the night that Grant showed up. Could I have the next, please? There's the motif in the center. This is drawn from Amos Doolittle's engraving of the battle at the North Bridge. Next slide. Ebenezer Hubbard, the grandson of an Ebenezer Hubbard who was at the bridge, gave the town $600 to build a bridge because he was one of those who was incensed at the fact that the monument was on the wrong side. Then there was also a bequest from Hubbard of $1,000 to build the bridge and to commission from the young Daniel Chester French, the Minuteman. Next slide, please. This was a very big deal. There were 50,000 people in Concord. There would have been more, but the railroad trains were completely tied up with traffic. They stopped sending trains to Concord early in the morning, but there are 50,000 people in town. That is the oration tent and the dinner tent at the site of the battlefield. Could I have the next, please? That's the inside of the dinner tent, fit for lunch for 1,500. And the next, please. The joke was that the warmest thing at that dinner was the ice cream. This is one of the ribbons for the state legislators who showed up for this event. It was Grant, part of his cabinet, and on and on. Next, please. And this is French's monument. There are a group of women there. This is not identified, but this does seem to be April 19th, 1875. These are probably descendants of the men who were at the North Bridge. But the women had no part in this celebration. And Louisa May Alcott was not happy about that and wrote a scathing essay, and I'll just give you a little taste of it. There will come a day of reckoning, and then the tax-paying women of Concord will not be forgotten, I think, will not be left to wait uncalled for, or be considered in the way. And then I devoutly wish that those who so bravely bore their share of that day's burden without its honor will rally round their own flag again, and following to the footsteps of their forefathers will utter another protest that shall be heard round the world. Next slide, please. And this is the ticket for the Centennial Military and Civic Ball, which was held at the Agricultural Hall by the train station. Next slide, please. And we'll jump forward 50 years to 1925. This is one of the badges for a citizen of Concord to wear to identify themselves in the affair. The next slide, please. The guest of honor in 1925 was the vice president, Charles Gates Dawes, who was actually the great-great-grandson of William Dawes, the rider who, with Paul Revere, spread the alarm on the night of April 18th. And this is from Alan French, who was the chair of the speaking committee. So this was about the literary exercises. The vice president declined to speak, but he was there. Next slide, please. This is for the anniversary ball, which was held at the Armory and has been many times subsequently. And the next, please. There were stamps issued. This is one of several different stamps that was issued. This isn't actually a postage stamp, but there were official U.S. postage stamps. And the next, please. And there was also a $50 minted by the United States, a real $50. It could circulate, but it was also used as a fundraiser. So First National Bank of Boston would sell you a $50 for $1, and the extra 50 cents funded the celebration. So as I said, I will end in 1925, and I expect at the next meeting we'll pick up from there. Thank you.
Well, that gives you a lot to think about, doesn't it? Certainly all of the possible controversies that can arise over next to nothing. And that is not the intended message.
Yes, it was.
That is not the intended message. And for those of you who remember more recent history, from when you were 3 or 4 years old, in 1975, we had an event in Concord which had over 100,000 people attending. We had the President of the United States. We had a large parade. We had a gala ball in a large tent on Emerson Field. We had we had like Patriots Day on steroids. And that is what we are keeping in our mind in terms of what we would like to be doing, because with the passage of time, it just becomes what happened here 250 years ago has become more and more important in the world because of the challenges to our democracies in the world and on liberty and freedom. And it is an issue that is before us every day, and it is something that we have to appreciate and to recognize and remember. Our next speaker, Dr. Robert Monroe, is a real philosopher. Yes, he has a PhD, and guess what the PhD is in? Philosophy. You rarely meet somebody who is a doctor of philosophy who is actually a philosopher. So, and he is the assistant head of school at Concord Academy, who is charged with curriculum and inclusion. And he is one of the members of our executive committee. And he is going to talk about some of his ideas, and he is going to act as a facilitator in stimulating response from this marvelous audience. Rob?
Let's do it. All right. Oh boy. It is really awesome to see so many people here in 3D and in 2D, wherever they are here. So thank you all for being here. Like Henry said, I'm Rob Monroe. My office is about 40 feet that way, so it wasn't really hard to get here. My day job is working at Concord Academy, and I'm also on a couple of boards and committees in town, so feel really invested in the town, and I'm really excited to be a part of this executive committee and to see this event unfold. Henry had mentioned something about Patriots Day on steroids. I'm not sure if that's the exact angle we're going for 2025, but we'll keep it in our hearts, just all the same, and see what we can come up with. Henry likes to remember, get nostalgic about the event in 1975, which is all well and good, but I wasn't alive then and have no idea what he's talking about. So I've read a lot about what has happened in 1975, 1925, and before then. And clearly, as David had mentioned, this is an event that elicits an incredible amount of passion, spirit, energy, strong words, right, for folks in Concord and outside of Concord. And I think part of the goal for us here as a committee is to channel that excitement, that energy, that spirit, and to use some of that history and that legacy and build on it to create an incredible series of events leading up to and during Patriots Day in 2025, and then use that as a springboard to see what we as a town can do going forward, right? So in a way, I see this as an observance, a reflection of history, but how can we utilize that to look ahead and where Concord can be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? The town of Concord right now, and certainly in 2025, will be the most diverse Concord that we've ever had. And in that way, there's a really great opportunity for us to get feedback from residents in Concord, understanding that these events are going to put Concord on the map. People are going to come here, right? There were over 100,000 people in 1975. I'm sure that we're going to have significantly more folks visiting the town throughout these celebrations. And this is an opportunity for us as residents and people who love Concord to shine and to really showcase what we're all about. And so this is, as David had mentioned, this is one of at least 3 opportunities where we can take the work we're doing as a committee, share it with you all, and then solicit feedback so that we're making sure that these events are as inclusive and as exciting as possible. So as much as these celebrations themselves are really important, one thing I hold dear is the fact that the process we undertake toward these celebrations has to be just as important. We have to hear as many voices as possible. We have to have as many conversations as possible. We're going to disagree. That's cool. That's certainly in the water of these events, right? But ultimately, in the next 3 years, we will have come as a town together to develop an incredible series of celebrations and programs. And so we can look back on this afterward and be really proud of that. So what I want to do is give a little bit of a background about what we've done in the past few weeks, and then we have a lot of time to chat. We have a microphone that we will pass around for those of us who are 2D on the screen, but really the idea here is to figure out and to help us as a committee, where should we be going, right? We have a few years until celebrations kick off. What should our process look like? Who are the people we need to talk to? And what are the considerations we need to keep front of mind? So a few weeks ago, on a really lovely Sunday, on the 16th of October, we met at the Concord Museum and welcomed all of the executive committee members and the members of every subcommittee. So there were over 60 of us in the Lyceum at the Concord Museum. And it was the first time we, as a large group, had an opportunity to talk, mingle, meet each other, be in fellowship with one another. And so it was a chance to do some really good brainstorming, to share what we had done up to that point, and to prepare for this meeting so that we were in a good position to receive really good feedback. So the 3 guiding questions that really sparked conversation on the 16th are on the left here. What is the purpose of the 250th celebration? What should be the unifying theme of this celebration? And what should be the events and outcomes we're expecting, right? We have an opportunity to make this our own, right? And so we wanted folks at that meeting to think big and to dream big. We haven't solidified a budget yet, so it was a great opportunity to blindly think big without having the parameters of finances there. And so a lot of the themes that came out of that October 16th meeting aren't surprising. Liberty, bridge, justice, revolution, unity, right? Those are some of the major themes that would be sprinkled throughout a lot of these celebrations over the past 100 or so years, and are really representative of who we are as a town, right? Really representative of the conversations we're having and the direction we want this town to go in. And so our job as a committee and as a number of subcommittees is to take a lot of those concepts and to make them manifest. How do we go from unity and revolution and bridging and performance and education to actual programs, to actual events and celebrations? And so we're here tonight to ask for your help in developing some of these ideas and to let them percolate and see what happens. And what I would love to do is, we can certainly solicit feedback on those 3 questions that we went over on the 16th, but also a number of other questions that we'd love help with are, what do we need to keep front and center as we plan for the 250th? Whose voices need to be considered that we may not be currently considering? And then, what's the celebratory events look like? Are we talking about one event? Are we talking about a series of events, right? This is, in a lot of ways, going to be, right, a lot of eyes are going to be on Concord around this time, which is awesome and super daunting, right? And so I think for me and others, there's this excitement and fear of, we got to get this right. This has to be perfect. And we hope it'll be perfect, and it might not be perfect, but it's going to be Concord, right? And so whatever we develop, we want to be excited about, and we want to be proud of the fact that we were able to get feedback from a lot of people, folks who were around in 1975, folks who were born, 9 years after 1975, for example. Just a random date, right? And those people who also, right, work here but may not live here, who are going to visit here who may not live here, right? So here's our shot, friends. This is an opportunity for us to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to stop talking. I do want to note a couple of things. We'll go with raising hands, please, right? I'm a teacher, so that's what we do, right? Raising hands. And we'll make sure the microphone makes its way across different folks. I would love it if folks felt empowered to speak, but also if you don't feel comfortable speaking, or if you have ideas that are not fully formed, but you want to reach out to us later, in a little bit I'll put up the email for the executive committee that you can email us, and we'll use that to continue the conversation. All right, so the other thing I was going to mention is that this is meant to be a dialogue, right? So I'm not going to take notes, and folks in the executive committee will likely take a little bit of notes, but we want to be present and available to have this be conversive, right? This will be recorded, so we can go back after the fact and make sure that we're taking notes from there, right? But I want you guys to feel free to speak your mind and let us know what we're talking about here. So, awesome, great, let's do this. Who wants to, there, yeah, perfect, there we go.
Is it on? There you go. I didn't do anything, right? It's on?
Hi, I'm David Owen, and I'm a representative from Concord Scout House. It's the organization that charters our Boy Scout troops and packs here in Concord. In 2017, we established a National Historic Trail recognized by the Boy Scouts that goes from Concord to Prospect Hill and Somerville, the entire route that the Minutemen chased the British. It's called the Minutemen's Pursuit Trail. And each year since 2017, we've led scouts on a hike on April 19th, not on Patriots Day, but April 19th, unless it falls on Patriots Day. Before the pandemic, we had gotten up to over 70 coming on that hike on that day. People come and hike it year-round. We've had troops come from Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, Maine, and of course locally. We're planning to hold that hike on April 19th, in 2025, and I just want to make sure we're coordinating appropriately with you all. I think without much promotion, we're going to end up with over 200.
That's awesome.
And I just want to know, how do I coordinate? And to the extent you all want to get behind and promote it, that's great. But I just want to be sure we're enabled to hold that hike and we're not getting in the way. We're usually out of town by 9 a.m. So, yeah, because we got 20 miles to hike. Okay, thank you.
Send us your information, and we'll be in touch with you. We have one of our executive committee members is in charge of events, and this sounds like it would fit under the category of an event, and it sounds like a great idea. I'd like to see more than 200.
And there will
soon be a calendar where such events can be noted so that people can be aware that that's happening. So thank you so much. It's a fantastic comment.
Great idea. Yep. We'll go over here, and then we'll head over there.
Am I on? Hi. Is it too loud? Hi. I'm Arthur Walker, and I'm a 50-plus year resident of Concord. My wife was born here, so that makes me half native Concordian, I guess. And I remember very well the 75 celebration. I was almost 25 years old, and I won't go into any detail because that would take up the whole night. But one thing that I think was special to many of us for the 1975 bicentennial was that several performing groups commissioned major compositions by world-famous composers. I was a member of the Concord Chorus, and we commissioned Randall Thompson, the composer who is widely known for choral music, and he set to music Robert Frost's poem, The Gift Outright, which Frost read at Kennedy's inaugural. And the Concord band commissioned the internationally known composer Norman Dello Gioio, who wrote some kind of fantasy for concert band, which was very well received. And the Concord Orchestra, I think, I don't remember, I think it was a woman composer. Arlene Zollman or something. I'm not quite as informed on that, but those three events concerning these performing groups in Concord were, I think, a significant statement about performing arts, and I think that had something to do with the 51 Walden Street, also the Center for the Performing Arts, was in some way a gift from the town to itself. I don't quite know the details, but that was dedicated during the bicentennial week, I believe. So the arts, the performing and the fine arts, theater, all kinds of arts, I think could be very nicely included in an exciting way in this upcoming event.
Thanks for that, Arthur. And I think that it's an incredible idea. And I want to stay on that for a second. I'm trying to think, Di, are you here? Can you speak to your subcommittee a little bit, please?
I'm very happy to report that we do have a subcommittee called Art, Literature, and Music. And we've met a few times, geared up for a lot of exciting things. We are working on both commissioned items that would be special to the event, and also with some out-of-the-box kinds of things that we haven't thought of before. So we really welcome ideas, and one of the things that I start off our meeting every single time we meet is who is missing here. We have represented in our group 10 different organizations in town that represent the music and the arts and the literature. There are organizations like the Umbrella and Concord Art, the library, the museum, and so forth. But we know very well that this community has deep resources and tons of different groups that are active and do so much in this community. So I'd like to welcome any of you who are in that category, in smaller groups, who would like to be part of our subcommittee.
Awesome. Thanks, Di. I know there was a question back over here, and then we'll bring it back over. Yep. We'll give me one. We'll go with the mic just for our online friends.
Well, it's a question of like the questions on the left.
Yeah.
And this might not be the time or place for this, but like, can you share a little bit about the outcome of where you guys are leaning towards I'd love to feed off of the work that's been done to date on those questions on the left, maybe even the first one of the purpose of, can you share any more about the work that's been done to date before I provide more ideas and stuff?
So the great news is that we haven't yet solidified answers for any of these three things. And so we met on October 16th. We generated a whole bunch of ideas. We put up a lot of big, poster boards, and we wrote down a bunch of things. I brought them home. I snapped pictures of them and transcribed them. And then at our next meeting, we realized, oh, we have to actually prepare for this meeting. And so one of the things is that I think the outcome of that October 16th meeting was really to get our brains moving and make sure that we weren't necessarily all over the place, but rather we did find that we had some pretty loose but good parameters around making sure that this is focused on the history and the legacy of this event, making sure that we are getting children and students actively engaged in these events, making sure that it's as inclusive as possible, not just for residents of Concord, but also folks from around the country, around the world. And so we have to make sure that there's an accessibility element to this too. In terms of the unifying theme and the purpose, we're not there yet, right? And I think we're hopeful that between that October 16th meeting and this meeting, that at some point in the new year, we feel a little bit more confident about that. So by the time we have another one of these forums, we feel like we've gone from here to here. Still a bit of a way to go, but we're making moves there.
Thank you. Well, two thoughts that I had.
We need a beautiful identity system for this, a logo and look and a feel for the 250th that makes it sing. And I also wrote down Lin-Manuel Miranda. I think we should get him here.
Do you know him? So we do have, we're in the process of developing
Well,
a logo, I
we do
believe,
have a process to create a logo, and in fact, the very person in the room who's going to help us to do that is sitting right over there, Priscilla Sturgis, and she's here to hear ideas, and eventually, with a task force together, we will create a logo that will not only signify what we're talking about here, but also be on hats and shirts and all the other ways in which, in which the paraphernalia of all of this takes place. But you're precisely right, and thank you.
Yeah. Great. We'll go right here, please.
So I'm Jim Sherblum, and one of the things I would hope would be one of the purposes we have is to tell Concord's story whole for the first time. As recently as 1975, it was considered unpolitic to lift up not only the things that we're proud of, but those things we aren't proud of. Having been a historian by training and a venture capitalist by profession, I'm very conscious that most of the wealth in Concord has come from initially getting the indigenous people's land, acquiring it on unjust terms, and then feeding and supplying the slave trade and financing it, and then the military-industrial complex in the 20th century. Without those, Concord wouldn't be the very prosperous town it is compared to surrounding towns. I'd like to be able to lift up those stories alongside all those things we can rightfully be proud of.
100%. No, thank you.
Right.
And I know that David Wood and his subcommittee are working on education and history, and you're absolutely right? This is an opportunity for us to really showcase all of Concord's history, not just stuff that people already know, but, the stuff that we haven't yet had a chance to tell on a larger scale. So this is the moment to do it, 100%. Thank you.
So I'm Doug Ellis. Been a past captain of the Minutemen and reenactor, and love just honoring those who came before us. For me, the purpose is unity as Americans. This is our heritage. These are the values that form the country. Let's focus on what brings us together, not what divides us.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a great message.
Thank you.
And along those lines, David will talk about breakfast for 200 people at the Masonic Lodge. Masonic Lodge, happy to be involved with anything in here. It's an organization of people who like to do charitable works and participate in the community, so more than happy to help. And the Concord Minutemen, which I know we've got members on the committee, but just a shameless plug. We are more than happy to help out in any capacity for ceremonies, just for making appearances. It makes Concord special. I mean, where do you get Minutemen and guys with muskets and can give demonstrations? We can do that, and we can bring in lots more people. There were hundreds back in '75. Now we've got a couple dozen on a good day, and we can bring in guys from outside of the town, but I know a lot of people here would love to get things going again, and we'd be more than happy to bring people in and get them outfitted and get the muskets and make that big show that there was in '75. So.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think this goes for everyone here and then folks who aren't here. If you are a partner with an organization, or if you are representing some organization or someone and you want to help out, let us know, right? One of the things we're trying to do is to figure out who are the partners going to be so that we don't step on people's toes, we don't have redundancies, but rather we're bringing in as many folks as possible. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Scheneman. I'm a member of the Communications Subcommittee, but I'm also the co-founder of the magazine Discover Concord. And we have a plan. We're going to be working in tight coordination with the committee to, as sort of the countdown begins from Patriots Day celebrations in 2023, as we get closer to 2025, we will be dedicating more and more share of voice of the magazine to the stories around, leading up to and around April 19th. I know in this room alone, there are many, many people that have great ideas like the Scout Trail you were talking about. I want to hear about all of them because we want to include those in the publication, and in 2025, we're actually going to have a special dedicated edition that will be closely linked to these celebrations. So please, any idea you have, I would really love to hear about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Let's go there, yeah.
Thanks. My name is Jared Cass, resident here. And another reason that April 19th stands out for me is April 19th, 1861, when the Massachusetts, is April 19th, 1861, when the Massachusetts militia marched and was the first to be wounded in the riots of Baltimore, protecting President Abraham Lincoln, and then marching to Washington to protect Washington and Lincoln. And it is always just, it's partially coincidental, but I like to think it's a little bit more than coincidental. Certainly it's not only Concord, the 6th Militia, but there were Concordians, of course. And to me, just even if we think about quoting from Emerson in the Rood Bridge, the looking back, Emerson was also looking forward as an abolitionist. And so for me, the unifying theme would be that the shot heard round the world began the process of forming the more perfect union that we're still trying to form. And why not at least include that as a part of the recognition and the celebration? Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a young woman over there in a sweater. Why don't we start with her first, and then we'll go to him. Yep. Okay. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Dean Charter. I'm the chair of the Select Board in Acton, and we're just getting our committee together to do pretty much the same sort of thing that you've got planned here in Concord. Obviously, we're not as big a set of players as Concord was, because you had the battlefield, but we did provide the Minutemen. And we have them buried on our town common. So certainly we want to reach out to you and collaborate as much as we possibly can between our towns, because as we're reminded from time to time, Acton was Concord's cow pasture for about 100 years. We've almost gotten over that now. But we certainly hope to collaborate actively with Concord, and I'm really pleased to see how far you guys have advanced. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dean.
Hi, I'm Liz Cobbs, resident here in Concord, just 2.5 years now. I wanted to echo some of the other comments. Jim, you started with those varied histories, and what I hope we can do is bring those histories forward into the present and show how we're unifying and really bringing these aspects of our history, all of them, together. And one additional comment, and I don't think any of those are opposed to any of the comments that have been stated so far. I think those disparate histories and how we are now is just the story, and I think that is a unifying story for the nation as well, which is, you know, another aspect of this, of who outside of the voices that'll be in the room that should be included, especially in this particular moment in our history. Another couple of shorter comments. I'm on the personnel board for the town, and it struck me that really lifting up the wonderful people that work for the town would be a wonderful addition, and somehow to bring in some part of the celebration or some events that really highlight the work that they're doing and how that has progressed the town so far. We have some unique institutions in town that other towns don't have, and I think those are really to be celebrated, including the Minuteman media in the back there, who work so hard for all of us. I'm also on Rotary, and I think Rotary might be another institution that we could also pick on to help in this area. Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.
You first? Okay.
Hi, I'm Rob Morrison. I'm a teacher at the Fenn School and a history teacher. And Rob, your comments about expanding this to be a celebration for the country also reminded me that there are over 90 places in the United States that are townships or counties or cities that are named Concord in the country. And I've been doing a little personal project of going to all of these places, and I've been to over 50 of them so far. And I've met so many really wonderful people, you know, from in Concord, Alabama, Concord, Louisiana, Texas, Minnesota, Idaho, all over. And I'd just love to be able to offer an invitation to some of them in an official capacity, or not me in an official capacity, but them being in a representative of another Concord. And the one thing that we all have in common, the only thing we have all in common is that our place was established with a sense of ambition, a sense of unity, that we're coming together in a peaceful unity. Thanks.
Thanks, Rob.
My name is Janine Penfield, and I'm the regent of the DAR chapter, Old Concord, in Concord. And I'm in discussion with the community participation chair, which is great. But the introductions tonight sparked a fire in me that I have to touch. And it's and in the risk of throwing gasoline on the Concord and Lexington fire. Recently, I was in Lexington at the unveiling of a plaque of the Lafayette Trail. And since we'll be celebrating things for 1824, so 2024, I was hoping that we could invite them, because they will provide the plaque and have a plaque here in Concord. So, and some DAR chapters have kind of sponsored that, but that was one thing that sort of spoke to the other commenters of bringing it to a universal kind of history of that event.
The Historic District Commission has already rejected this.
We're not done. We haven't given up on that yet.
Thank you so much for mentioning that. It's become I'm Diane Proctor, the chair of the Communications Committee and Publicity Committee. And we're very interested in this and very concerned. The young man who was forwarding all of this came before the Historic Commission and Historic District Commission. It's different then. And there was some concern about the colors that were involved. And I think that this can be revisited. I hope it will be revisited. And you're absolutely right to talk about the unity of that event and his importance. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Thank you.
Oh, boy.
Hi. Hi. Excuse my back. I'm Brian Rossborough from Elm Street. And I have a metaphor that I would like to throw into your discussion. But just listening to the discussion and the contribution so far made me wish that the State Department, maybe they're here, we're here, to film this, because it is a demonstration of what we're all grasping for, which is an expression of unity, civility, and democracy. When I first heard of this, I turned to one of my advisors, Di Clymer, and she introduced me to the committee by name. And I scanned the committee, and it went to permanent monuments. And I thought, granite plinth, plaque, maybe a good-looking statue. And then events I thought of in reenactors, maybe a ball so that we could invite Lexington over and step on their toes. And I began to think how to make something that's gender neutral, class and community neutral. And I thought of the symbol that our forebears used to explain to the British that they were dissatisfied, and that is the Liberty Tree. Now, the Liberty Tree obviously has to manage the historical fact that what we were celebrating happened on a day certain, for a few hours certain, and has inspired the world ever since. But Liberty Trees were established in 13 colonies by committees of safety. As you know, if they didn't have a tree, they established a pole. I think they borrowed the idea from the Romans, who established a liberty pole to say to Caesar that they weren't satisfied. So we don't necessarily need to think of a tree as a protest, but rather as the opportunity that we want to enjoy a new freedom. We want to rewild Concord. We want to fight for the fact that Concord will remain a village and not become a town or a city. And it is inclusive in the sense that 12 schools, teachers, and students could all get involved. They could identify historic trees, tall, fattest, oldest. Many towns have heritage tree committees. And if we were to plant 250 Liberty trees in different places intentionally, along our arteries or in our 4 commercial centers or in our schools and parks, we could use those different events to celebrate the whole dynamic of what we truly believe is Concord. So if the committees involved would take a look at that, that would be a good start. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mary Clark. Brian, you just said what we all would say, I think. What a great idea and wonderful ideas that have come out of this whole meeting. And the first question that the committee asked is the question I'm pondering, because I think back to 1975 and that wonderful parade on a bright, wonderful day. It was, it was a small town celebration. And we want a small town celebration too, to pull us together as a town that grows and celebrates and struggles. As Jim said, we're still struggling. And yet we have the opportunity in this time of strife through the whole country and the world to be an example of how people can pull together and how the arts can serve us. I think the ideas of compositions that you talked about, and singing and putting on plays, all the theater groups in town. And the one thing I would stress, and you've probably thought about this many times, is the young people getting involved. They're the ones who are going to have to do the work, well, later on, but we want to inspire them, we want to give them confidence, and we don't want to just look to them like this perfect town, but that there's work to do, and they can do it, and we can help them. So I really, really hope that we will make a special place for the kids in middle school and high school and all the kids in the town. Thank you.
I'm Bill Bailey. I live in West Concord. One of the things I would like to see us do in this anniversary is to honor the literally hundreds of veterans from Concord who gave their lives in various wars. If you go to Monument Square and you look at the Civil War and you see many Irish names, they're not just simply the old Yankees. And then you go to World War II and you see Norwegian names and you see Sicilian names, and we are one, and I would like us to honor their memory.
Hello, my name is Abby Mayette. I am a representative of the Concord Independent Battery, so as many have said tonight, I can confirm that we will 100% be participating in the events and looking forward to that. I also want to say something that's sort of come to mind tonight. I am not a resident of Concord, but I have many family connections to the town and went to school here for a couple years. So I think the messaging too is about those like myself who have familial stories here, who call this place home in a different way. I think of the students who have called Concord Academy and Middlesex home for a period of time. How do we invite them back and let them know that this may have been their home temporarily, or maybe more of a home in their heart than somewhere where they literally put down roots? How do we invite them to come and participate and be a part of the celebration?
I did want to note briefly for our Zoom friends that if you have a question, I'm not even sure where to look for my Zoom friends, but if you guys have a question, to raise your hand, and then our folks back there will help us out with that. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Polly Meyer. I've been here for 25 years, so I guess I'm a newcomer. But I'm co-founder of Living Concord, which is a community events platform for Concord events. We have a great following. We have a weekly newsletter with several thousand followers, a big social media presence, and I would love to help with events. I have a bunch of ideas and would love to contribute in some way. One thing that I was thinking about is a few years ago we had Vox Concordia, I think it was a speaker series. And there's just such interesting residents in town who are making their mark, making their voices heard. And I would love to hear from them. And like you were saying, I think the multi-generational events, I would love to think about how we can do that.
I'm going to speak, yes. So my name is Mark Pauley. I was born here. I do not live here, but I work here. And I have a unique job that I work at a place called Minuteman Media. And our job this year is to try to record this as a long 3-year documentation of what it takes to do this. I've been looking at the archives of what has happened in years past, and I can't find any cell phone images back then. So the only things I've got is very blurry, footages of 16 millimeter and things like that were done in the different periods of time. So this is an opportunity that we're at Minuteman Media, of which one of my compadres are here at the other side there, are going to be documenting as much of this as possible for your kids and grandkids and everyone else in the future, because everyone's got cell phones these days, but we're going to have awesome videos. So, and the last meeting that I attended on Sunday, I've been editing that this morning, yesterday, and so we will have the open publicness of that discussion added to this discussion. And if any school or wants to watch how this whole process was done, or you want to watch it yourself, we will have this really well documented, like a party at a rave or something. I mean, it'll be everywhere. So, anyways.
So we have someone who has a question.
They can talk.
Oh, so she can talk.
Yep.
So Jean Griffith has a question.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful. Actually, I feel like the previous speaker just read my mind, because I was thinking, besides, thank you all for doing this, and I'm really excited. Besides parades and concerts and events, what I'd really like for us is to convey to those in the future, like say for the 300th celebration, what do we want them to know? I thought it was really interesting to see, what was celebrated in 1825, 1875, 1850. I just really think that we're part of the chain of history, and it's important to be part of that. The other thing I'd like to say is, since I live next to the high school, I'm well acquainted with the Concord band, or the high school band, and they sound great, and I really hope that they're involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa, let's Can we go front here?
Did I first? Sorry, guys.
Melissa's getting her steps in tonight.
Yeah, good. 10,000.
Hello, my name is Corey Dimitris. I am one of the rare young adults in Concord, Massachusetts, and I would very much love to be a part of the conversation about how we bring young perspectives to the forefront, young creatives, people who want to, be inspired by previous years and our history, but also are very much part of the narrative that we are writing now, very much part of the script, the document that is Concord going forward. So like getting those thoughts and perspectives, more than just a way of reenacting the thoughts and feelings from many hundreds of years ago, but getting real living thoughts and now that are the living Concord and bringing those to the forefront. I myself am part of a band, a music group that operates out of Concord, and we've really liked to try to take any opportunity we can to bring ourselves to the public. And I very much like the idea of bringing art in the form of visual art and also like possibly a music festival, more than just in the, these towns, but maybe bringing it out to like the Metro Boston. We're like just on the edge of the Metro Boston area. Inviting bands and other, talent to be involved in this, like giving them a platform, because clearly this is a very powerful thing and lots of people will be watching. So there are lots of creatives in our region who would love to have that opportunity. And the second thing that I wanted to bring up was, as an environmentalist, I am very curious about how we plan to make this event as sustainable as possible, taking into consideration carbon footprint, transportation, consumption of goods and plastics and food and all of that. So I'd love to know how the town is going to be transparent about that. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. It just, Corey, a spark that I was thinking about it, about our question, whose voices are not in this room that need to be considered. And by the way, I'm Joe Palumbo. I'm on the events committee. And so I think in terms of voices we need to think about, going back to what Jim was saying before, when we retell the story, we need to make sure we have concrete information now, right, about patriots of color who participated in the events of April 19th, 1775. Are we putting those stories on the forefront? Are we putting the stories on the forefront of the indigenous folks who brought this gift to us of this town we live in now? Because that's how we get new people included when we tell their stories today about the past. So I think that has to be really central to that. So if we're going to put up a permanent monument, we're going to have another permanent monument of a granite marker to some, no offense everyone, but some dead white people. We have a lot of those. It might be time to have a monument to the patriots of color. It might be time to have a monument to the women who served in the revolution. Like really push this envelope, because you're right, people are going to be looking at us in 2025, and they're going to look to us and say, wow, Concord, that sweet little place that just never changes? Or are they going to look at Concord and say, wow, look at those people. They are a diverse community. They're pushing themselves. So they really are an example for, because the greatest gift of our country, right, is we are maybe the last best hope of, we could become a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multi-diverse democracy that works. And why don't we show people that? So that to me seems one of the things we can do here. And some ideas that people have sent to me that I wanted to make sure I mentioned tonight in case you don't get another chance, is that are we making sure the events we create are really free and open? If we want to be inclusive, we can't have $200 balls for people to come to. We need to make sure these events, whether it's speakers or fireworks or drone works, are free or minimal if we really want people to come. And if we really want people to come to these meetings, we should be providing childcare so people can come to these meetings. School people, we know this, right? That's how you do stuff at school. If you want people to come, you make it easy for them to come. And then finally, one that's been going around that I do think should be said out loud, Concord hymn. What about a Concord hymn from 2025 written by Amanda Gorman, who comes to our town and gives it at the new monument? Wouldn't that be something for Concord? Thanks. Just want to get that out there. In case you never hear from me again, I just want to say it all tonight.
Yeah, whoops, hang us up.
Thank you. I'm Victor Curran.
I teach the Concord history course that you take to get licensed as a tour guide in Concord. That's the course that Jane Gordon used to teach. A lot of people in this room have taken that course. And so I tell the stories of Concord, and I tell those stories in the town's museums and visitor centers and historic houses. People come here and they know what happened here. But what I try to tell them is why it happened here, because it doesn't just happen randomly. The things that happened here happened because people made choices and they acted on them. And what I want visitors to Concord to come away with is understanding who were those people, all of those people, and why they made the choices that they made. And Joe was covering some of that same idea in what he was saying. So I don't know if that would come under the heading of a unifying theme or more of a unifying spirit, but what I would like to see in planning this is telling the story as a story of people and of why they did the things they did.
Hi, I'm Karen Ahern. I've worked for the town for over 40 years, but I don't live in the town, although it seems like I'm here all the time. Many years ago, we had a United Nations Day celebration out through the town. I don't know if anybody came to it or not, but we had nonprofit organizations all up and down Main Street. We had 3 areas where there were concerts. So while we were talking, or while you were talking about the events, I was thinking, why couldn't we have a United Concord Day instead of United Nations? Have the same format, have the music going around the 3 staging areas, nonprofit organizations all up and down Main Street. Of course, it means the town has to be involved a lot. But there were 5 of us on the committee. It took a year's worth of planning, but it went off very smoothly. We had plans for inside in case it rained, but it was a perfect day. And we had a lot of people, actually almost too many people. So I was thinking that instead of United Nations, you could have United Concord, and that could be the unifying theme. Thank you.
We have time to take probably 1 or 2 more questions. So if you've been holding on to it, now's your time.
Terry, are you not raising your hand?
I'm Terry Ackerman. I'm on the select board, but obviously speaking for myself, many good ideas tonight, really good crowd. And I really agree with all of the ideas, but I think one of the most important is getting the young folks and the next generation interested. And many of the ideas that we've been talking about tonight are traditional ways of telling the story, like parades, monuments, concerts, lectures. And a lot of us old fogies are used to that, but of being kind of an audience that's watching and being passive. But these young folks, they like to be actively involved, okay? So I think we also need to think really out of the box. How can we really get them involved? Things like role-playing, social media, and I don't even know what this is, but multiplayer, multiverse games. These kinds of things that, sound real exciting to me, but I don't really even know what they are. But I think if we can figure out how to get young people involved to help us set up those things, we will be able to tell our story in many ways. Thanks.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks for that, Terry. I think that's a great last place to be, and getting young kids involved, that's going to be pivotal. It's going to absolutely be pivotal, and I think this was awesome. Friends, thank you so much. Friends who are here 3D, friends who are there in 2D, and a huge shout out to some marvelous people who are helping us out with the microphone and the technology. Thank you guys so much for your support here. We had over either on Zoom or in person over 100 people here, which is amazing, right? And because I'm a teacher, I get to assign homework. So the homework is to reach out to your friends, family, neighbors, folks who you know and who you think might be interested in this conversation, and spread the gospel, right? And get out there and let folks know about tonight. Get folks excited about this event. This will work really, really well if people get jazzed up about it, right? And so, again, thank you. I'm going to pass it to my dear friend, Diane Proctor, who's got some very wise, astute words for us. So thank you, guys.
What an amazing group. Oh my gosh. If we could all just stay together for about a month, I think we could figure all this out. I want to thank Nancy Confrey, and I want to thank Linda Ziffrin, and I want to thank Melissa Sawfield, and I want to thank Mark Pauley and the MMN crowd who have made all of this possible and helped us technologically. And I want to thank the library for this remarkable facility. I mean, it's just fantastic. And I want to thank Rob Monroe, and I want to thank David Wood. My goodness, what a raconteur, David, and all of our beloved Henry Dean. Each person in this room and online is a stakeholder in our future. And as the Harvard College Dean, Rakesh Karuna, told the freshman class as they gathered this fall, you have arrived at a difficult moment in history, with the question of who we are, who we thought we were, and who we are going to be, all in play. Indeed, he's correct. Ours is a challenging opportunity. Whereas the comment above my head reminds me, the one that goes here. And so we're going to start. At times, history and fate meet at a single time, in a single place, to shape a turning point in man's unending search for freedom. And that is precisely where we are, in so many ways, right here in Concord and nationally. We stand at this inflection point, and the excitement of gathering to find a truthful way to celebrate the founding of our country rests with the citizens and friends of Concord. It is a celebration that requires our willingness to listen carefully to each other and to communicate openly, patiently, and graciously. And we certainly have done that tonight. What a very fine group of people has gathered here. The commitment and willingness of each of us to engage in this undertaking is genuinely appreciated by the Executive Committee. So quite simply, before I say a final word, I want to say thank you for coming. Thank you for spending time this evening, whether you're online or whether you're here, because time is the one commodity we all have that's precious. And that when we expend it in this kind of gathering, that is an expenditure, and it is deeply appreciated. As E.M. Forster's epigraph in Howard's End reminds us, only connect. For it is through connecting that we create a vibrant community. Therefore, may we go forward with a sense of being connected to each other, with an excitement about the collective project that lies ahead. Please connect, and we're so glad you're here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, and thank you, Rob, and thank you, David, and thank you all for being here. I get to go to a lot of meetings. I do, and very few of them are anything like this. This is a very exceptional experience. And what has brought all of you together is a common interest in doing something very important for this town. And it is our town, and it belongs to us, and we belong to it. The man there said, why did it happen here? Well, he said it was the people who were here, and now we are the people who are here, and we are the ones who will be making the choices and these choices will be important for the town. So keep up the good work, stay in touch with us, keep feeding us your ideas, and did we lose it up there? We had the email address for the town. Can we throw that up again for our committee? If we don't get it, there it is. 250 celebration@concordma.gov. Feel free to use that. We monitor it, and we are really looking forward to hearing from all of you. Many of you who may not have felt comfortable speaking in front of such a large, even though very welcoming crowd. But thank you for coming, and good night.